At the charity gala, Eleanor Blackwood stood in her $50,000 crimson gown, champagne flute raised, announcing to everyone within earshot that she was divorcing her husband Marcus, calling him too poor for her social status. Unaware that the unassuming man she was humiliating in front of Manhattan's elite actually owned Sentinel Trust Bank, the very institution that would be approving her company's $500 million merger in exactly 72 hours. Marcus, the quiet IT consultant she dismissed for 5 years, stood there in his modest rented tuxedo, watching his wife celebrate her freedom with Richard Castellane, the venture capitalist she'd been seeing for months. The same man whose company desperately needed Eleanor's tech firm to secure funding that only Marcus's bank could authorize. The room glittered with old money and new ambitions, but nobody knew that the most powerful person in attendance was the man being laughed at beside the champagne fountain. What would happen when Eleanor discovered that her future, her merger, her wealth, her reputation, rested entirely in the hands of the husband she just destroyed? And what would Marcus do with that power now that the woman he loved had chosen status over loyalty at the worst possible moment? The crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom cast prismatic light across 500 of New York's most influential figures, each one worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. Marcus Chen stood near the terrace doors, his rental tuxedo feeling tighter around his chest with every passing minute, watching his wife work the room like she'd been born to it. Eleanor moved through clusters of venture capitalists and tech moguls with the grace of a woman who'd spent the last 3 years transforming herself from a scrappy startup founder into someone who belonged among Manhattan's elite. Her company, Luminary Technologies, had grown from a 3-person team working out of their Brooklyn apartment into a major player in cybersecurity, and Eleanor had grown right along with it, or rather, away from the man who'd supported her through every late night and failed pitch. Marcus remembered when they'd met at Columbia 7 years ago. He'd been a graduate student in finance. She'd been finishing her computer science degree, and they'd bonded over cheap ramen and shared dreams at a dingy bar near campus. Back then, Eleanor wore her hair in a simple ponytail, laughed without covering her mouth, and talked about changing the world through technology rather than conquering it through connections. He'd fallen in love with her ambition, her brilliance, her refusal to let anyone tell her what she couldn't achieve. They'd married small, 30 people in a courthouse, dinner at the Indian restaurant where they'd had their first date, and Marcus had been happy. Deliriously, completely happy. That was before Luminary took off, before Eleanor started attending events like this, before she began introducing him as Marcus, he works in IT, with an apologetic smile that told everyone he wasn't quite at her level. He'd let her believe that because the truth was complicated. Marcus wasn't just an IT consultant. He was the principal owner of Sentinel Trust Bank, a position he'd inherited from his grandfather, along with the directive Marcus had taken seriously. Stay humble, stay hidden, understand the world from the ground up before you let power change you. For 5 years, he'd maintained his cover, working as a freelance IT consultant to understand how real businesses operated, how real people struggled with money and opportunity. His grandfather, Arthur Chen, had built Sentinel from nothing, and before he died, he'd made Marcus promise that he'd earn the right to run it by understanding the people the bank served. So Marcus had kept his secret, even from Eleanor, telling himself that their marriage was built on something more than money. He'd watched her company grow, had celebrated every victory with her, had held her through every setback, all while knowing he could write a check that would solve any problem she faced. But Eleanor had never asked for that. She'd wanted to succeed on her own terms, and Marcus had respected that. Loved her more for it even. Except somewhere along the way, Eleanor had started looking at him differently, started flinching when her new friends asked what he did, started staying later at networking events, coming home smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his. 3 months ago, Marcus had noticed the name Richard Castellane appearing in her calendar more frequently. 2 months ago, he'd seen the text message flash across her phone while she was in the shower. Can't wait to celebrate properly once you're free of him? He'd said nothing. Part of him wanted to see if Eleanor would choose him, choose their marriage, without knowing what he could offer her. Another part of him, the part that still remembered ramen dinners and shared dreams, desperately hoped she would. Tonight had answered that question. Marcus! Eleanor's voice cut through his thoughts, bright and sharp. She was walking toward him with Richard Castellane at her side, the venture capitalist's hand resting proprietarily on the small of her back. Richard was everything Marcus appeared not to be: tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, wearing wealth like a second skin. There you are. Richard and I have been looking for you. Marcus straightened, meeting his wife's eyes. She was beautiful tonight, almost incandescent with champagne and confidence. But there was something cold in her gaze that made his chest ache. I've been right here. Right. Well, Eleanor exchanged a glance with Richard, something passing between them that felt rehearsed. Actually, I'm glad we found you. There's something we need to discuss, and I'd rather do it now. Get it out in the open. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by some instinct that sensed drama. Marcus recognized several faces. Patricia Westwood, the hedge fund manager Eleanor had been courting for investment. David Chang, CEO of a competing tech firm. Amanda Sterling, whose family owned half of Manhattan's commercial real estate. People who mattered in Eleanor's new world. People who didn't know Marcus existed beyond being Eleanor's vaguely embarrassing husband. Eleanor, maybe we should talk privately, Marcus started. But she was already shaking her head. No, I think this needs to be public. Honest. She took a breath, and Marcus saw Richard's hand squeeze her waist encouragingly. Marcus, I want a divorce. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Someone gasped. Marcus heard Patricia Westwood whisper to her companion. The room didn't go silent. This was Manhattan. People were too sophisticated for that. But conversations definitely shifted, attention focusing on the small drama unfolding near the terrace doors. Eleanor, Marcus kept his voice low, controlled, even as something cracked inside his chest. Can we please discuss this somewhere else? Why? So you can talk me out of it again? Eleanor's voice rose, champagne loosening her tongue. I've tried to make this work, Marcus. God knows I've tried. But I can't keep pretending that we're equals anymore. I can't keep introducing you to important people as my husband when you're just... She gestured vaguely at him, at his rental tuxedo, at everything he appeared to be. You're a freelance IT consultant, Marcus. You work from coffee shops. You wear the same 3 button-downs on rotation. I've built something real, something significant, and I need a partner who can stand beside me in this world, not someone I have to apologize for. Richard cleared his throat, his expression perfectly calibrated to sympathetic concern. Eleanor, darling, maybe we should... No. Eleanor cut him off, riding the wave of her own conviction. Marcus deserves honesty. I've been seeing Richard for 4 months. He understands my world, my ambitions. He's what I need now. And you, she looked at Marcus with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. You're too poor for my social status. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's true. I need someone who belongs at events like this, who doesn't look uncomfortable in a tuxedo, who doesn't have to check his bank account before buying wine. The crowd around them had grown. Marcus could feel their eyes, their judgment, their barely concealed delight at watching someone else's humiliation. This was entertainment for them, a story they'd tell at brunch tomorrow. But Marcus wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Eleanor, at the woman he'd loved for 7 years, trying to find some trace of the person she'd been when they'd shared dreams over cheap ramen. She was gone. Whoever this was, this polished, ambitious woman declaring him insufficient in front of Manhattan's elite, she was someone new, someone who'd chosen status over loyalty, wealth over love, perception over truth. I see, Marcus said quietly. His mind was working rapidly, pieces falling into place. Richard Castellane Ventures, the firm that had been advising Eleanor on her company's expansion, that had been pushing her toward the $500 million merger with Titanium Corp. The merger that needed financing, substantial financing, from a major bank. The merger whose approval would come through Sentinel Trust Bank, where Marcus would review the final terms in exactly 72 hours, not as Marcus Chen, the IT consultant, but as Marcus Chen, principal owner and chairman of the board. Eleanor didn't know. Richard didn't know. Nobody in this room knew that the man being humiliated beside the champagne fountain controlled the very institution that held Eleanor's future in its hands. "You'll have divorce papers by Monday," Eleanor continued, her voice softening slightly, as if kindness now would erase the cruelty of public rejection. "I'll be fair about assets. The apartment can be yours. It's not like I'll need it once Richard and I are together. My lawyer will handle everything cleanly." "How generous," Marcus said, and he saw Eleanor flinch slightly at his tone. "Good. Let her feel something, even if it was just discomfort." "Don't be like that." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You knew this was coming. We haven't been happy for over a year." "I was happy," Marcus said simply, "but I suppose that doesn't matter now." Richard stepped forward, placing himself slightly between Marcus and Eleanor in a gesture of protection that would have been laughable if it wasn't so insulting. "Look, man, no hard feelings. Eleanor and I, what we have is something special. She needs someone who can match her ambitions, and you seem like a decent guy, but you're just not—" "Not what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge now. "Not rich enough, not connected enough, not good enough for the world Eleanor's built?" "Exactly," Richard said, apparently missing the danger in Marcus's tone. "Nothing personal, just reality. Eleanor's Luminary Technologies is about to close a $500 million merger with Titanium Corp. She's going to be one of the most important tech founders in Manhattan. She needs a partner who can navigate that world with her, and frankly, you can't." "The Titanium merger," Marcus repeated. "Right, the one that needs bank approval." "Already handled," Richard said smugly. "Sentinel Trust Bank. They're processing the paperwork now. Should be approved by Monday. Eleanor's future is secured, and honestly, that's what matters here. She deserves someone who can celebrate that future with her properly." Marcus looked at Eleanor, who was watching him with something that might have been guilt but probably wasn't. "You're certain this is what you want? There's no going back from this." "I'm certain," Eleanor said firmly. "I should have done this months ago. I didn't want to hurt you. But Richard's right. My life is moving forward, and I need to move forward with someone who belongs in it." The crowd around them had grown even larger. Marcus could hear whispers, C phones being surreptitiously angled to capture the moment. By tomorrow morning, this would be all over Manhattan's social media, another story of a woman who'd outgrown her husband. Eleanor would be the protagonist, sympathetic and ambitious. Marcus would be the footnote, the man who wasn't enough. Let them think that. Let everyone think that. Because in 72 hours, when Marcus walked into Sentinel Trust Bank's executive boardroom as chairman, when he reviewed the Luminary Titanium merger documents, when he exercised his authority over the deal that Eleanor had built her entire future around, then the story would change. Then everyone would understand exactly who Marcus Chen really was, and Eleanor would learn what it cost to choose status over loyalty. Marcus left the gala without another word, walking through the Plaza Hotel's marble lobby and out into the October night. Manhattan gleamed around him, indifferent and eternal, buildings piercing the sky like monuments to ambition. His phone buzzed, probably messages from the few acquaintances who'd witnessed his humiliation, offering sympathy he didn't need. He ignored it, walking the 40 blocks back to the Brooklyn apartment he'd shared with Eleanor, because he needed the movement, needed the city's anonymous crowds around him while he processed what had just happened. Except he'd processed it already. That was the strange thing. Marcus had spent 3 months preparing for this moment, ever since he'd seen Richard's name appear in Eleanor's calendar with increasing frequency. He'd known she was pulling away. He'd known she was falling in love with someone else, someone who represented the world she wanted to inhabit. He just, foolishly, stupidly, hoped she might choose him anyway. His grandfather would have seen this coming. Arthur Chen had been many things. Ruthless banker, brilliant strategist, difficult father, but he'd never been sentimental about human nature. People show you who they are, Arthur used to say during their Sunday dinners at his Fifth Avenue penthouse, back when Marcus was still in college and the old man was trying to mold him into a worthy heir. Your job isn't to imagine them as better. It's to believe them the first time. Marcus had ignored that advice with Eleanor. He'd imagined her as better than her actions suggested, had believed in the woman she'd been, rather than the woman she was becoming. His grandfather would have been disappointed, but not surprised. The Brooklyn apartment was dark when he arrived, Eleanor's absence echoing through rooms that had once felt warm. Marcus didn't turn on the lights. He walked to the window overlooking the street, watching cars pass, people returning from their Friday nights, oblivious to anyone else's drama. Somewhere out there, Eleanor was probably still at the gala, celebrating her freedom with Richard, already mentally redecorating her life without Marcus in it. His phone buzzed again. This time Marcus looked. It was James Whitmore, his grandfather's former attorney, and the only person who knew Marcus's true identity. The message was brief. "I heard about tonight. Are you all right? Do you need anything?" Marcus typed back, "I'm fine. I need the Luminary titanium merger files on my desk by Monday morning. Complete review." 3 dots appeared immediately, then, "Of course. Marcus, what are you planning?" "Due diligence," Marcus wrote back. "Isn't that what banks do?" "Banks, yes, but you're hurt, and hurt people make rash decisions. Your grandfather always said—" "I know what my grandfather said." Marcus cut him off. "Send me the files, James, and schedule a board meeting for Monday afternoon. I'm taking my seat as chairman." A longer pause this time, then. "It's time?" Marcus thought about that. For 5 years, he'd maintained his cover, working his consultant jobs, living modestly, learning about business and people and money from the ground up, just as his grandfather had instructed. He'd told himself he was earning his position, proving he was more than just a trust fund heir. But really, he'd been hiding. Afraid that if Eleanor knew the truth, if anyone knew the truth, they'd see him differently, treat him differently, want him for the wrong reasons. Well, now Eleanor had shown him exactly what she wanted, and it wasn't him. "It's time," Marcus confirmed. He spent the weekend in the apartment, packing his things mechanically, separating his life from Eleanor's with the same efficiency he'd once used to solve her company's technical problems. It was remarkable how little space a 5-year marriage occupied once you removed sentiment from the equation. 3 boxes of books, 2 boxes of clothes, 1 box of miscellaneous items that hadn't seemed important until they became evidence of a life that no longer existed. Saturday afternoon, his phone rang. Eleanor. Marcus stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Marcus." Her voice sounded different, smaller, less certain than it had been at the gala. "I wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay." "I'm fine. Are you at the apartment?" "Packing. I'll be out by Sunday evening." A pause. "You don't have to leave so quickly. We can work out a reasonable timeline." "I'd rather leave now." Marcus kept his voice neutral, professional. "Cleaner this way." "Okay." Another pause. "Marcus, about last night, the way I said things, I could have been kinder." "Could you have?" Marcus asked. "Or was that exactly how you needed to say it?" He heard her inhale sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You needed an audience, Eleanor. You needed witnesses who could confirm that you'd moved on, that Marcus Chen, the IT consultant, wasn't good enough for Eleanor Blackwood, tech founder extraordinaire. If you'd told me privately, you'd always wonder if you'd made the right choice. This way, you burned the bridge publicly. No going back. That's not—" She stopped. "You're right. God, you're right. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize for being honest." Marcus looked around the apartment, at the life he was leaving behind. "You told me the truth at that gala. You think I'm too poor for your social status. You need someone who belongs in your world. I appreciate the clarity." "Marcus, please don't hate me." "I don't hate you." It was true. Marcus felt many things: betrayal, anger, disappointment, but hate wasn't among them. Hate required energy he didn't want to spend on Eleanor anymore. "I understand you. Maybe for the first time, I actually understand you completely." "What will you do?" Eleanor asked quietly. "Where will you go?" "I'll figure it out." Marcus allowed himself a small, bitter smile she couldn't see. "Don't worry about me, Eleanor. Focus on your merger, your future. That's what matters to you." "The merger?" Eleanor's voice brightened slightly, relief evident that they could shift to safer ground. Yes, Richard says it should be approved Monday. Then we'll be announcing Tuesday. It's going to change everything. I'm sure it will, Marcus agreed. Congratulations. They talked for a few more minutes, Eleanor filling the silence with details about her new apartment in Tribeca, her plans for expanding Luminary, the magazine interview she'd scheduled for next month. Marcus listened, offering appropriate responses, while mentally reviewing everything he knew about the Luminary Titanium merger. By the time he hung up, he had a clear picture of exactly what Eleanor expected to happen Monday. She was going to be very surprised. Sunday evening, Marcus moved his 3 boxes into a hotel suite in Midtown. Nothing fancy. He'd saved the Fifth Avenue penthouse his grandfather had left him for later, when his new life was more established. For now, he needed space to think, to plan, to prepare for Monday's transformation from Marcus Chen, the IT consultant, to Marcus Chen, chairman of Sentinel Trust Bank. James delivered the merger files personally, arriving at Marcus's hotel room at 8 p.m. with a leather briefcase and an expression of deep concern. "You look terrible," James said, setting the briefcase on the desk. "Have you slept?" "I'll sleep when this is done." Marcus opened the briefcase, pulling out the first file. "Walk me through it." For the next 3 hours, James explained the Luminary Titanium merger in excruciating detail. Luminary Technologies would be acquiring Titanium Corp's infrastructure division for $500 million, financed through a combination of Luminary's cash reserves, Titanium's assumed debt, and a $300 million loan from Sentinel Trust Bank. The merger would make Eleanor one of the most powerful tech founders in Manhattan, exactly as Richard had promised. Her company would triple in size overnight, positioning her for either an IPO or an even larger acquisition within 2 years. It was a good deal. Actually, it was an excellent deal, the kind that would normally receive Marcus's approval without hesitation. But Marcus wasn't feeling normal. "The loan terms," he said, studying the paperwork. "Who negotiated them?" "Richard Castellane's team," James replied. "They've been working with our commercial lending department. Standard terms for this type of acquisition: 5-year maturity, quarterly payments, covenants tied to revenue benchmarks." "And if those benchmarks aren't met," James hesitated, "then Sentinel has the right to call the loan. Standard provision. But not standard enforcement," Marcus said slowly. "Banks typically work with borrowers who miss benchmarks, renegotiate terms, extend timelines." "Yes, but..." James stopped, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Marcus, you can't be serious." "Walk me through the worst case," Marcus said. "Hypothetically, if Sentinel were to enforce the covenant strictly, what happens?" James took off his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "If Luminary misses revenue benchmarks, which they might, given how aggressive their projections are, and Sentinel calls the loan rather than renegotiating, Eleanor would need to find $300 million in cash immediately. She can't. The acquisition terms require that cash to stay in the combined company for operational needs. She'd be forced to either sell assets at fire sale prices or find a white knight investor willing to bail her out at predatory terms. Worst case? Worst case, Eleanor loses control of her own company. Maybe loses the company entirely if she can't make the numbers work." James leaned forward. "Marcus, your grandfather built Sentinel's reputation on being a fair lender, on working with borrowers in good faith. If I what?" Marcus interrupted. "If I enforce the terms Eleanor agreed to? If I hold her accountable for the deal she signed? How is that unfair?" "It's not about fairness," James said quietly. "It's about revenge, and revenge destroys everything it touches, including the person seeking it." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the merger documents spread across the desk. James was right. His grandfather had built Sentinel on integrity, on being the bank that worked with borrowers rather than against them. Arthur Chen had been ruthless in business, yes, but he'd never been vindictive. Never let personal grievances influence professional decisions. But Arthur Chen had never been publicly humiliated by someone he loved. "Schedule the board meeting for Monday at 2 p.m., Marcus finally said. "I'll make my decision then." James gathered the files reluctantly. "For what it's worth, Marcus, Eleanor made her choice without knowing who you really are. She chose to leave based on what she thought she knew. That's different from choosing to hurt you deliberately. Is it? Marcus asked. She told me I was too poor for her social status, James. She told me I didn't belong in her world. Whether or not she knew about Sentinel doesn't change the fact that she values money and status over the person I actually am. Maybe, James conceded, but ask yourself this. Are you planning to approve or reject this merger based on its financial merits or based on your feelings about Eleanor? Because if it's the latter, you're letting her control you just as much as you're trying to control her. After James left, Marcus stood at the hotel window, looking out at Manhattan's infinite lights. Somewhere in that sprawl of ambition and concrete, Eleanor was probably sleeping peacefully, dreaming of her merger, her expansion, her future with Richard. She thought her biggest challenge was behind her. She thought the hard part was leaving Marcus. She had no idea what Monday would bring. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling to his grandfather's last message, sent 2 hours before Arthur Chen died from a heart attack 5 years ago. The bank is yours when you're ready. Don't rush. Learn first. But when you finally take your place, remember, power isn't about having it. It's about knowing when to use it. Marcus had learned. For 5 years, he'd learned how business worked, how people worked, how money and power flowed through the city's veins. He'd learned patience, humility, perspective. Now it was time to decide if he'd also learned wisdom. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, November asserting itself over October's last gasp. Marcus woke at 5 a.m., showered, and put on one of the custom suits he kept in storage. Bryony, charcoal gray, worth more than a month's rent on the Brooklyn apartment. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Not Marcus Chen, the IT consultant. Someone else. Someone harder. Sentinel Trust Bank occupied floors 30 through 40 of a steel and glass tower in Midtown, the kind of building designed to intimidate through sheer vertical presence. Marcus hadn't been inside since his grandfather's funeral, had deliberately avoided the place while maintaining his cover. Now walking through the lobby at 7 a.m., he felt the weight of inheritance settle on his shoulders. Mr. Chen. The security guard, Mike, according to his nameplate, stood immediately. Sir, we weren't expecting, welcome. Welcome back. Thank you, Mike. Marcus paused. You were here in my grandfather's time? 15 years, Mike said proudly. Mr. Arthur Chen hired me himself, gave me a chance when no one else would. His voice softened. We've missed you, sir. The bank has missed you. Marcus nodded, something tightening in his chest. This was why his grandfather had built Sentinel the way he had. Not just as a profit machine, but as an institution that could change lives. That could give people like Mike chances. That could be more than just money moving between accounts. The executive elevator required a key card Marcus hadn't used in 5 years. It still worked, carrying him smoothly to the 40th floor, where Sentinel's executive offices occupied real estate worth more per square foot than most people earned in a year. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area designed to convey both power and taste. Marble floors, modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of Central Park. Marcus? A woman's voice, warm and surprised. Oh my God, Marcus! Sarah Kim, his grandfather's executive assistant and the person who'd actually run Sentinel's day-to-day operations, while Arthur Chen made strategic decisions, crossed the reception area quickly. She was in her 50s, elegant and competent, and she'd sent Marcus a check-in email every month for 5 years, updating him on the bank's operations without ever pressuring him to take his place. Sarah? Marcus found himself smiling genuinely for the first time since the gala. It's good to see you. Good to see you. She hugged him quickly, professionally. Marcus, it's been 5 years. We were beginning to think you'd never come back. I needed time. I know. Sarah studied his face, and Marcus saw understanding there. But you're here now. Does this mean... I'm taking my seat as chairman, Marcus confirmed. I'm calling a board meeting for 2 p.m. I need you to notify the directors. Sarah's expression shifted, professional now. Of course, anything specific on the agenda? The Luminary Technologies merger. I want a full review. Something flickered in Sarah's eyes. Surprise, maybe concern. But she simply nodded. I'll have the files in the boardroom by noon. Marcus, if you don't mind my asking, is everything all right? You seem... I'm fine, Marcus said, the lie smooth now. Just time to step into the role I should have taken years ago. He spent the morning in his grandfather's office, his office now, reacquainting himself with the bank's operations. Sarah had kept meticulous records, her monthly emails translating into detailed reports on every major decision, every significant loan, every strategic move. Sentinel was healthy, profitable, respected. Arthur Chen's legacy was intact. At 11 a.m., James arrived with coffee and concern. The board is assembling, he said, setting a cup on Marcus's desk. They're surprised but pleased to see you. Most of them knew this day would come eventually. Most of them? Patricia Morrison asked if you're planning to make changes. She's worried about her position. James paused. Marcus, these people have been running Sentinel in good faith during your absence. If you come in and start making drastic decisions based on personal issues, I'm not going to fire Patricia, Marcus said, or anyone else who's been doing their job well. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Marcus sipped his coffee, looking out at Central Park. The Luminary merger, from a purely financial perspective, how does it look? James sighed. Solid. Luminary's fundamentals are strong. Eleanor's built a good company with real revenue and real prospects. The merger makes strategic sense. Yes, there's risk in the revenue projections, but it's manageable risk. If you asked me to approve this loan without knowing anything about Eleanor or Richard, I'd say yes without hesitation. And knowing what I know? That's the question, isn't it? James set down his own coffee. Marcus, I know you're hurting, but you need to decide right now whether you're Marcus Chen the banker or Marcus Chen the wounded husband, because you can't be both in that boardroom. The board meeting convened at 2 p.m. in a conference room that could have doubled as a museum of corporate power. Mahogany table, leather chairs, abstract art that probably cost more than most people's homes. 10 directors assembled, all of them accomplished professionals who'd known his grandfather, who'd worked with Arthur Chen to build Sentinel into what it was. They greeted Marcus with varying degrees of warmth and curiosity, clearly wondering why he'd chosen today, this merger, to finally claim his inheritance. Marcus took the head of the table, his grandfather's seat, and felt the weight of expectation. Thank you all for coming on short notice, he began. I know my absence has been extended, and I appreciate the patience and professionalism you've all shown in maintaining my grandfather's vision for Sentinel. I'm here today to formally assume my role as chairman and to review a significant transaction currently before us. Patricia Morrison, the commercial lending director who'd initially approved the Luminary loan, spoke up. You're referring to the Luminary Technologies merger. Marcus, that's already been approved at the department level. It's a straightforward transaction. I'd like to review it personally, Marcus interrupted smoothly. My prerogative as chairman. Patricia exchanged glances with David Nguyen, the chief credit officer. Of course, though if I may ask, is there a specific concern? We've done thorough due diligence. I'm sure you have. Marcus opened the file in front of him. Walk me through Eleanor Blackwood's company. How did Luminary go from a Brooklyn startup to a $500 million acquisition in 3 years? For the next hour, the board walked Marcus through Luminary's history. Eleanor had founded the company with 2 partners from Colombia, developing cybersecurity software that caught the attention of several Fortune 500 companies. Their early clients had been impressed enough to refer others. Revenue had grown steadily, $2 million the first year, $8 million the second, $25 million the third. By year 4, Luminary was generating $75 million annually with healthy margins and strong growth prospects. It was objectively an impressive success story. Eleanor had built something real. The titanium acquisition makes sense, David Nguyen explained. Their infrastructure division complements Luminary's software. Combined, they'll be able to offer end-to-end solutions that neither could provide alone. We're projecting $200 million in combined revenue by year 2. Projecting, Marcus repeated. Based on what assumptions? Cross-selling to both companies' existing clients. New market penetration, standard merger synergies. And if those synergies don't materialize? A brief silence. Patricia cleared her throat. Then they'd be below their revenue covenants. We'd work with them to restructure. Would we? Marcus asked quietly. Or would we enforce our rights under the loan agreement? The room's temperature dropped several degrees. Everyone understood what Marcus was asking. James, sitting at the far end of the table, looked like he wanted to intervene, but remained silent. Marcus, Patricia said carefully, is there something specific about this transaction that concerns you? Because from where we sit, this is a good loan to a good client. Eleanor Blackwood has built a strong company. She's a credible borrower. Yes, there's risk in any acquisition, but that's why we have covenants, to protect both parties. In personal relationships, Marcus asked, should those factor into lending decisions? Patricia frowned. I'm not sure I understand the question. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Eleanor Blackwood is my wife. Was my wife. We're divorcing. She announced it at a charity gala Friday night in front of half of Manhattan's business community. Called me too poor for her social status. She's now involved with Richard Castellane, the same man who's been advising her on this merger. The silence was absolute. Several board members looked stunned. James looked resigned. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to concern. You didn't know, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. No, Patricia admitted. You've kept your private life very private. We knew you were married, but we didn't know to whom. And Richard Castellane's involvement, we knew he was Luminary's advisor, but she stopped. Marcus, I understand this must be incredibly difficult, but we need to keep personal feelings separate from business decisions. Do we? Marcus asked. Because it seems to me that personal feelings are very much part of business decisions. Eleanor chose to leave me because she didn't think I had enough money or status. She made a decision based entirely on her perception of my financial value. Now her financial future depends on my approval. How is that not personal? David Nguyen spoke up. With respect, Chairman, if we start making lending decisions based on personal relationships or grievances, we compromise everything Sentinel stands for. Your grandfather built this bank on integrity, on being the institution that businesses could trust to make fair decisions based on merit, not connections or revenge. My grandfather also taught me that people show you who they are, Marcus countered. Eleanor showed me exactly who she is. She values money and status above loyalty or character. She made that crystal clear. Now I'm supposed to hand her $300 million and trust that she'll use it responsibly, that she'll meet her covenants, that she won't make the same character-based decisions in business that she made in our marriage? That's not fair, James said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Marcus, I know I'm here as your advisor, not a board member, but I need to say this. You're conflating two different things. Eleanor's decision to leave you was about compatibility, about what she needs in a partner. That doesn't tell us anything about her business judgment or her ability to run Luminary successfully. Doesn't it? Marcus challenged. She walked away from a 5-year marriage without hesitation because she decided I wasn't valuable enough. What happens when her business faces challenges, when the merger gets difficult? Will she show the same lack of commitment? The same willingness to abandon ship when things don't meet her standards? Patricia leaned forward. Marcus, I understand you're hurt. This isn't about being hurt, Marcus snapped, his control slipping slightly. This is about whether Eleanor Blackwood has the character to deserve $300 million of Sentinel's money. And based on what I've seen, based on what she's shown me about who she really is, I'm not convinced she does. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. They were in impossible territory, caught between their chairman's clear personal vendetta and their professional obligation to evaluate loans fairly. I need to see more, Marcus finally said. I want updated projections. I want personal financial statements from Eleanor and her partners. I want independent verification of their client relationships. And I want all of it on my desk by Wednesday. Marcus, Patricia protested, the merger is supposed to close Friday. We've already given our commitment. Then I suggest you work quickly, Marcus said coldly. This meeting is adjourned. The week that followed was brutal. The board worked around the clock assembling the documentation Marcus demanded, all of them aware that their chairman was operating from wounded pride rather than business logic. Eleanor called Tuesday afternoon, her voice tight with stress. Marcus, what are you doing? He'd been expecting this call. Due diligence. Due diligence? The bank already approved our loan. We're supposed to close Friday. Do you know what you're doing to me? To my company. I'm doing my job. Eleanor. Your job? Her voice rose. What job? You're an IT consultant. The moment hung between them, crystalline and fragile. Marcus could end this right now. Could tell Eleanor the truth, watch her world realign as she understood exactly how badly she'd miscalculated. But something held him back. Not mercy exactly, but a need to let this play out, to see what Eleanor would do when she thought she was negotiating with an institution rather than her ex-husband. The bank has concerns, Marcus said neutrally, about your projections, about whether the merger assumptions are realistic. You'll have your answer by Thursday. Concerns? Marcus, what's happening? Did someone at the bank find out about us? About the divorce? Is someone punishing me because of... She stopped. Oh my God, Marcus, I'm not what? Eleanor? You're not sabotaging my deal because you're angry at me? Her voice had gone quiet, almost frightened. Marcus, please. Whatever I did, whatever I said at the gala, this is my company. This is years of work. Don't destroy it because you're hurt. Marcus looked out his office window at Central Park, at the city spreading beyond it. I would never sabotage a good deal, Eleanor. If your merger is as solid as you believe, you have nothing to worry about. But if it's not, if the bank rejects us, Eleanor's breath caught. Marcus, I've burned other bridges. Richard convinced me that Sentinel was a sure thing, that we didn't need backup financing. If this falls through, I'll have to restart the whole process. It could take months. The titanium deal will collapse. My investors will lose confidence. Everything I've built. Then I suggest you pray your numbers are as good as you claim they were, Marcus said and hung up. He felt sick immediately after. James had been right. This wasn't banking. It was revenge wearing banking's clothes. His grandfather would have been ashamed. Wednesday afternoon, Sarah knocked on his door with unusual hesitation. Marcus, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Who? Eleanor Blackwood. Marcus's hand tightened on his pen. Send her in. Eleanor entered his office, and for a moment, Marcus forgot to breathe. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual power wardrobe. She looked for the first time in 3 years like the woman he'd married. Eleanor. She stopped inside the door, looking around the office with visible confusion. Marcus, I don't understand. Why are we meeting here? This is Sentinel Trust Bank's executive floor. I asked for you at reception, and they sent me up to the chairman's office, but understanding hit her like a physical blow. Marcus watched her face cycle through confusion, realization, shock, disbelief. No, she whispered. No, this isn't. You can't be. Chairman of Sentinel Trust Bank, Marcus confirmed quietly. Principal owner. I inherited the position from my grandfather 5 years ago. Right before we got married, actually. Eleanor sat down abruptly in one of the visitor chairs, her face pale. You've been, all this time, you weren't an IT consultant? I am, but I'm also Arthur Chen's grandson and heir. I've spent 5 years learning the business from the ground up before taking my place, just as he instructed. During that time, yes, I worked as an IT consultant, to understand how real businesses operate, how real people struggle with money and opportunity. Marcus kept his voice level, professional. My grandfather built this bank on integrity, Eleanor, on understanding the people we serve. I've been earning the right to run it. You lied to me. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. For our entire marriage, you lied. I kept my identity private, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. And before you accuse me of deception, let's remember who made assumptions about who I was based on how much money I appeared to have. Eleanor flinched. Marcus, please. You called me too poor for your social status, Marcus continued, something hard in his voice now. You announced our divorce at a charity gala because you needed a partner who belonged in your world. Someone like Richard Castellane, who wears his wealth like a badge. Well, Eleanor, if I'd worn my wealth the same way, If I told you who I really was, would you still be my wife? That's not fair, isn't it? If I'd told you 5 years ago that I was Arthur Chen's heir, that I owned Sentinel Trust Bank, that I could write a check for more money than you've ever made, would you have looked at me the way you looked at me Friday night? Would you have called me too poor? Eleanor was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. So this is revenge. You're going to reject my merger because I hurt you. I haven't decided anything yet, but you're considering it. You're actually considering destroying everything I've built because… She stopped, wiping her eyes. I was honest with you, Marcus. Maybe I was cruel about it. Maybe I handled it badly, but I told you the truth about how I felt. And now you're going to punish me for that honesty by taking away the thing I care about most. The thing you care about most, Marcus repeated. Your company, your merger, your status. Not the marriage we had, not the life we built, not the person I actually am, just the business success you've achieved. That's what matters to you. Yes, Eleanor stood, her voice rising. Yes, my company matters to me. I've spent 3 years building it, Marcus. 3 years of 18-hour days and impossible challenges and proving myself to investors who didn't take me seriously because I'm a woman in tech. I've created something real, something important, and you're going to take it away because I chose Richard over you? I'm going to make a business decision, Marcus said coldly, based on whether you've demonstrated the character and judgment required to manage $300 million of my bank's money responsibly. And honestly, Eleanor, based on what I've seen, based on how quickly you abandoned our marriage for someone with better social credentials, I have serious concerns about your character. My character? Eleanor laughed bitterly. You kept your entire identity secret from me for 5 years, and you're questioning my character? I kept my identity private to see who people really were, Marcus shot back, to see whether they valued me for myself or for my money. And you failed that test spectacularly, Eleanor. You looked at Marcus Chen, the IT consultant, and decided I wasn't good enough. You never once considered that there might be more to me than what you saw. You never asked about my family, my background, why I chose the work I did. You just decided I was insufficient and moved on. That's not… Eleanor stopped, her face crumbling. Oh God, Marcus, you're right. You're completely right. I did that. I looked at you and saw only what I wanted to see, and when it didn't match my ambitions, I threw you away. She sank back into the chair. What kind of person does that? What kind of person throws away 5 years with someone they love because they're embarrassed about their job? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his anger wavering, replaced by something more complicated. Sadness, regret, the ghost of what they'd once had together. I don't know, he finally said, but that's the person you showed me you are. And now I have to decide whether that person deserves Sentinel's support. Eleanor looked up at him, mascara smudged, all her polish stripped away. If you reject the merger, I'll lose everything. The deal with Titanium will collapse. My investors will pull out. I'll probably have to sell Luminary just to cover my existing obligations. Everything I've built will be gone. I know. And you're actually considering doing that because I hurt you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The board says your numbers are good, that the merger makes financial sense, that Luminary is a solid company with real prospects. But I look at you and I see someone who makes decisions based on social status rather than substance. Someone who values perception over reality. Someone who abandoned a 5-year commitment the moment something shinier came along. And I wonder, when the merger gets hard, when the integration challenges mount, when things don't go according to plan, will you show that same lack of commitment? Will you abandon ship again? I won't, Eleanor said desperately. Marcus, I built this company from nothing. I fought for it every single day. Yes, I made a terrible decision about our marriage. Yes, I was shallow and cruel and everything you think I am. But I don't quit on my business. I never have. Please, don't confuse my personal failures with my professional capabilities. Why shouldn't I? Character is character, Eleanor. You don't get to partition it. The person who could humiliate me at a charity gala is the same person who'll be managing $300 million of my money. Why should I trust that person? Eleanor stood, walking to the window, her back to Marcus. Do you remember when we met? She asked quietly. That bar near Columbia. You were celebrating finishing your thesis defense. I was drowning my sorrows because I'd failed my algorithm's final. You bought me a drink and talked to me about probability distributions until I stopped crying. She turned to face him. I fell in love with you that night, Marcus. With your kindness, your intelligence, the way you made complicated things simple. I loved you for who you were, not what you had. And then I stopped being enough. No. Eleanor shook her head. I stopped being myself. I got so caught up in building Luminary, in proving I could succeed, that I turned into someone I don't even recognize. Someone who cares about social status and appearances and all the superficial bullshit that doesn't actually matter. You're right. I failed your test. I looked at you and saw only what I wanted to see, and what I wanted to see was someone who could enhance my status, rather than someone who loved me for who I actually am. She was crying again. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. This was the Eleanor he'd married, the woman who could acknowledge her mistakes, who could be vulnerable, who could see past her own ambitions to the people around her. This was the person he'd loved. But was it real? Or was Eleanor simply telling him what he needed to hear to get what she wanted? I need time, Marcus said finally, to think, to separate my personal feelings from the business decision. The board meets again tomorrow. You'll have your answer by end of day. Eleanor nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, thank you for at least considering it, for not just rejecting us outright. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Marcus, for what it's worth, I do still love you. Not the way I should have, maybe not in a way that would have made us work long term, but I love you, and I'm sorry I hurt you. Regardless of what happens with the merger, I'm so sorry. After she left, Marcus sat in his office until night fell, watching Manhattan's lights emerge like stars across the city's landscape. Everything in him wanted to reject the merger, wanted to make Eleanor feel the way he'd felt at that gala. Insufficient, dismissed, worthless. But James's words kept echoing. Are you Marcus Chen the banker, or Marcus Chen the wounded husband? If he rejected the merger, Eleanor would lose everything she'd built. Her company would collapse. Her reputation would be destroyed. She'd spend years rebuilding what a single decision, his decision, had taken away. But if he approved it, was he rewarding her betrayal? Teaching her that character didn't matter? That success excused cruelty? His phone buzzed. A text from James. Whatever you decide tomorrow, make sure you can live with it for the next 30 years. Because you will. Marcus thought about his grandfather, about the legacy Arthur Chen had built, about the kind of man Arthur had tried to mold him into. His grandfather had been ruthless, but never vindictive, hard but never cruel, powerful but never petty. Arthur Chen would have approved the merger. The realization hit Marcus like cold water. His grandfather would have looked at Luminary's numbers, seen a good company making a smart acquisition, and signed off regardless of personal feelings. Because that's what integrity meant. Making the right decision even when the wrong one would feel better. But Marcus wasn't his grandfather. He was younger, angrier, more wounded. And part of him, a large part, wanted Eleanor to suffer the way he'd suffered. Thursday morning, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. The directors assembled quickly, all of them clearly anxious about which version of their chairman would appear, the professional banker or the wounded husband. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table, the Luminary file in front of him. I've reviewed the additional documentation, he began. Luminary's financials are solid. Their client relationships are real. The merger projections are aggressive but achievable. From a purely business perspective, this is a good loan. Relief rippled through the room. Patricia started to smile. However, Marcus continued, I have concerns about leadership character, about whether Eleanor Blackwood demonstrates the judgment and commitment necessary to navigate the challenges this merger will present. The relief evaporated. James closed his eyes. That said, Marcus went on slowly, I've realized that my concerns are based primarily on personal experience rather than professional observation. Eleanor has built a successful company over 3 years. She's met every commitment to her investors, her employees, her clients. Whatever decisions she's made in her personal life, her professional track record is strong. He paused, looking around the table at faces that were trying not to show their relief too obviously. My grandfather built Sentinel on the principle that we evaluate borrowers based on merit, not personal relationships. If I reject this merger because I'm angry at my ex-wife, I compromise everything he built. Everything this institution stands for. Marcus took a breath. Therefore, I'm approving the loan. Standard terms, standard covenants, standard administration. We'll work with Luminary if challenges arise, as we would with any good borrower. The board members visibly relaxed. Several smiled. James looked almost proud. But, Marcus added, and everyone tensed again, I want it clear that this approval is based solely on Luminary's business merits, not on personal history, not on relationships, not on anything except the numbers in the company's track record. Eleanor Blackwood will succeed or fail based on her own capabilities, not on any special treatment, positive or negative, from me. Understood, Patricia said, relief evident in her voice. Thank you, Marcus. This is the right decision. Was it? Marcus wasn't sure, but it was the decision he could live with, the decision his grandfather would have approved, the decision that let him look at himself in the mirror and see someone who'd chosen integrity over revenge. After the meeting, Marcus called Eleanor. It's approved, he said without preamble. Standard terms. Your closing is back on for Friday. Silence then. Marcus, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say. Say you'll prove I made the right decision. I will. Eleanor's voice was thick with emotion. I promise, Marcus, I'll make this work. I'll build something you can be proud of. Build something you can be proud of, Marcus corrected. This isn't about me anymore, Eleanor. This is about you proving to yourself what you're really capable of when you stop caring about status and start caring about substance. I will. A pause. Marcus, I know we're done. I know I destroyed what we had and there's no going back. But I want you to know that you're a better person than I am, a stronger person. I hope someday I can be half as good as you are. We'll see, Marcus said. Good luck with the merger, Eleanor. He hung up and sat in his office for a long time, feeling emptier than he'd expected. He'd done the right thing, made the ethical choice, lived up to his grandfather's standards. So why didn't he feel better? Because revenge, he realized, would have been easier. Hurting Eleanor would have been immediate, satisfying, finite. But integrity, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, meant living with complexity, with ambiguity, with the knowledge that good decisions didn't always feel good. Friday evening, Sarah knocked on his door with a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. I heard the Luminary merger closed successfully, she said, pouring them each a drink. I thought we should celebrate your first major decision as chairman. Is it worth celebrating? Marcus asked. I approved a loan to my ex-wife's company. How is that not a disaster? Because you approved it for the right reasons, Sarah said simply. Because you put the institution ahead of your personal feelings. Because you showed exactly the kind of integrity your grandfather prized. She raised her glass. To Arthur Chen's grandson, who proved he was worthy of the inheritance. They drank. Marcus felt the scotch burn down his throat, warming him from the inside. For what it's worth, Sarah added, I think you made Eleanor's victory a little hollow. She got what she wanted, but now she knows what she gave up to get it. That's a different kind of punishment. Having to live with your choices knowing you could have chosen better. Is that enough? Marcus asked. Is making her feel guilty enough for what she did? I don't know, Sarah admitted, but it's what you can live with. That has to count for something. Over the following weeks, Marcus settled into his role as chairman. He made decisions, built relationships, slowly transformed from the withdrawn heir who'd stayed hidden for 5 years into the visible leader Sentinel needed. He was good at it, he discovered. His time working from coffee shops, struggling with real business problems, understanding how money and opportunity intersected in people's actual lives. All of it had prepared him in ways that traditional banking education never could have. Eleanor's merger proceeded successfully. Luminary and Titanium integrated smoothly, reaching their first quarter revenue targets. Marcus received quarterly reports, read them professionally, approved standard covenant modifications when needed. He and Eleanor never spoke directly. Everything went through their representatives. But he watched from a distance as she built her success, wondering if she ever thought about what she'd given up. 3 months after the merger closed, Marcus attended another charity gala. Different venue, different cause, but the same cast of Manhattan elite. He came as himself this time, Marcus Chen, chairman of Sentinel Trust Bank, wearing a custom tuxedo that made his rental from that previous night look laughable. People who'd ignored him before wanted to talk now. People who'd witnessed his humiliation pretended they hadn't. People who'd laughed wanted introductions. Marcus was polite to all of them and genuine with none. Halfway through the evening, he saw Eleanor across the room. She was with Richard still, wearing another expensive gown, laughing at something a venture capitalist was saying. But when her eyes met Marcus's, the laughter stopped. Something passed between them, regret, maybe, or recognition of what they'd lost. Richard followed Eleanor's gaze, stiffening when he recognized Marcus. He whispered something to Eleanor, probably warning her to stay away, to not jeopardize the business relationship with her ex-husband. But Eleanor walked over anyway. Richard tried to follow, but she waved him back. Marcus, she stopped a careful distance away. You look good, happy. I am, Marcus said, surprised to find it was true. Sentinel is going well. I'm enjoying the work. I'm glad, Eleanor hesitated. I wanted to thank you again for approving the merger, for choosing the high road when you could have destroyed me. I approved a good business deal, Marcus said neutrally. That's all. That's not all. Eleanor looked around the ballroom, at the wealth and status she'd once thought were so important. I've been thinking a lot about that night, about what I said to you, about why I said it. Eleanor, we don't need to. I was terrified, she interrupted, of not being enough, of being that girl from Brooklyn who didn't belong with these people. I thought if I had the right partner, the right image, the right everything, then maybe I'd actually deserve to be here. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I already had the right partner. I was just too stupid and scared to see it. Marcus felt something soften in his chest. We both made mistakes. No, Eleanor shook her head. You made one mistake, not telling me who you really were. I made 1,000, caring more about perception than reality, valuing status over substance, throwing away someone who loved me for someone who enhanced my image. She looked at Marcus directly. Richard and I broke up last week. He wanted access to Sentinel's network, not me. Funny how that works. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned something valuable, that the person I was becoming wasn't someone I liked very much. So I'm trying to change, trying to be more like the person I was when we met, when I cared about building something meaningful rather than looking impressive. That's good, Marcus said. Your company should benefit from that. My company? Eleanor smiled sadly. Right. Not me, not us, just my company. She started to turn away, then stopped. For what it's worth, Marcus, you won. You proved you were the better person, that you had more integrity, more character. I hope that gives you some satisfaction. It doesn't, Marcus admitted, because this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about two people who stopped understanding each other, who wanted different things, who made bad choices that hurt each other. He paused. I hope you build something great with Luminary, Eleanor. Something you can be proud of, not because it'll prove anything to me, but because you deserve to succeed at what you're passionate about. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. That's more generous than I have any right to expect. She walked away back to the party, back to her life without Marcus in it. He watched her go, feeling something that wasn't quite closure but was close enough. Later, driving home through Manhattan's glittering streets, Marcus thought about power and revenge, about integrity and choice. He'd had the opportunity to destroy Eleanor, had held her future in his hands and chosen to let it go. Not because she deserved mercy, necessarily, but because he deserved to be better than his worst impulses. His grandfather had been right. Power wasn't about having it, it was about knowing when to use it. And sometimes the greatest power was in choosing not to use it at all. in letting people succeed or fail on their own merits, in holding yourself to a higher standard than the one applied to those who hurt you. Marcus had learned that lesson at tremendous personal cost, but he'd learned it, and in the end, that knowledge, that hard-won wisdom about who he wanted to be, was worth more than any revenge could have provided. The city lights blurred past his window, each one representing someone's ambition, someone's dream, someone's belief that they could build something lasting in this temporary world. Marcus was one of them now, not hiding anymore, not pretending to be less than he was, but stepping fully into the role he'd inherited and the man he'd chosen to become. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined when Eleanor had announced their divorce at that charity gala. It wasn't closure or vindication or victory, but it was something better. It was integrity. And Marcus could live with that,